Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. I'm Naomi Jacobs. I'm going to be talking about the MA in AI, Society and Global Challenges, which is one of our new Global Leadership MA programs. I am a lecturer in design in the Lancaster School of Contemporary Arts. Uh, Lancaster Institute for Contemporary Arts, LICA, and I'm going to be talking to you about this course. I'm one of the co-conveners of the course. As I say, I'm based in LICA, and my other co-convener is also in LICA, is Joseph Lindley. And together we're leading the program, but actually this is one of the cross-faculty new programs we've developed. So we're both based in design, but actually people are going to be feeding into this course, contributing and teaching on it from across the humanities, arts and social science disciplines, all of which have things to say and to contribute to about AI, which is this interdisciplinary area that is affecting all areas of the humanities, arts, social sciences and society in general. So we use the word AI a lot. This course is about artificial intelligence, but what do we really mean when we use the term AI? That's something that we're going to be exploring as part of the course. And a lot of the time, people have these visions of this kind of shiny images of robots and technology and imaginings of the kind of science fictional version of, super intelligent computers that are going to take over the world and destroy us all, or solve all our problems and make the world a utopia. But actually, there's many different things that AI can cover, and we need to unpick some of those because, yes, we have these science fictional imaginings, we have these potential futures. But a lot of our current technology runs on algorithms, can be described as AI. A lot of really mundane things like doing a search online or a recommender algorithm for some music that you'd like better, or people having support systems, chats for all kinds of things. And it affects all kinds of people. And it's not this necessarily shiny vision. And we have to interrogate, what does it mean when we have these ideas of robots that are portrayed in this particular way? And that's the kind of thing we're going to be exploring in our course, not just scary dystopias of AI as a horrific destruction, but also not utopias of AI is going to solve all our problems. Where is the kind of gray area? Where's the questions between all that? And the next question that I guess people will ask is, once we've established what AI is, as we said, is a whole raft of different technologies, some of which are here now, some of which are coming in the future. But why should we care about AI? What's it doing? Why is everyone so excited by it and so scared of it? And part of that is because it really can do amazing things. So at the moment, we have all kinds of reports about, for example, AI being used in healthcare. So here is an example of a news item from Nature recently, talking about how AI can develop personalized cancer treatment strategies. AI is very good at dealing with huge amounts of data. This can be data about, for example, people's genomes, treatment strategies, examining vast amounts of what's worked and what not worked, or very specific things that can be personalized to you. So in this, we can really get very individualized treatments. We can find things that maybe were hidden before. We can do analysis of all kinds of images, for example, to perhaps do this detection in a way that can be a very time-consuming, difficult, and tedious process for many doctors to kind of speed up that process and help things like analysis of X-rays and scans and images, or sorting through a load of potential different molecules to find which ones are going to be better drugs for specific treatments. So there's all kinds of wonderful things that AI can do, not just in this field, but in other fields as well. And we can think about how AI is able to help us address some of the larger global challenges that we have at the moment. So thinking about, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals, which are one of the key areas we think of as guidance for thinking about ways we need to improve sustainability on a worldwide scale. Some of the large problems, like having affordable and clean energy, like bringing action on climate change, like eliminating poverty and helping with equality and water sources, and all of these kinds of things. We can definitely think about how AI is going to help with these global scale problems, how we can push this power of this analytic technology into spaces where there are these problems that need this large amount of calculation and analysis and power of AI to help us find better solutions. The other side of that coin as well, though, is if we're talking about sustainability, for example, we have to think about what are some of the challenges that might be caused by AI. We've seen a huge rise in generative AI over the last few years. People are very excited about these language models, for example, that can do all kinds of things. These are being built into search engines, they're being built into word processing software, they're being built into all kinds of applications. But these are very energy hungry, power hungry ways of using calculation. We think about something like ChatGPT being a fun toy you can put in your prompts, but every time you use a prompt, it sends that request to the servers which are doing this calculation, which are running these models, and that uses electricity, it uses water, and we need to think about the sustainability implications of what happens when we use this technology. The other thing we need to think about is who is being impacted by these technologies, and is this unequally distributed? So there's a lot of people doing work about bias that can be inherent in some of these models, some of it which is bias that comes from society or individuals, so people pushing their own biases onto technology, but some that is just emergent that comes from the underlying training data, for example. So I'm going to try playing this little video clip here, which I think illustrates very nicely some of the challenges with bias in AI, specifically in image generation. Hopefully the sound will work.
There's no sound,
There's
Naomi.
no sound. I'm just going to stop sharing and share again with the sound. Include sound. There we go. Is this now showing full screen?
It is, but not the slide. That's it. Yeah.
So I'm just going to move on from that, but it does give you an idea of the kinds of biases that can be built into these systems, as I say, either intentionally or unintentionally. So these are the kinds of things that we will be investigating as we go through the course in the AI MA. And this will fit into some of the research that we do at Lancaster University, which starts to ask these questions about how will these technologies influence and affect lots of different industries worldwide. So as an example of that, I wanted to briefly mention an event that we held in 2023, which was around AI in the creative industries. We had a summit where we brought people together from across the creative industries to discuss some of these fears, challenges, and opportunities of these kinds of technologies. And we had people from organizations such as the BBC, from small and medium enterprises. We had a range of different areas impacted, such as music and architecture and television broadcasting news, to discuss, what is some of the things that AI is going to mean for these industries and organizations. And in the course of the MA, we will be exploring these kinds of challenges. So a brief that might be given, for example, might be to say, okay, if you're going to be consulting and supporting a small or medium enterprise who is concerned about how AI is going to impact their business, what might be some advice that you might give them to help understand the implications of AI, how to use AI in a more considered way, how to give guidance to someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about it but wants to know how it's going to impact on their business. And this is the kind of thing we might ask you to think about, to develop these solutions, to use your knowledge of what are some of the risks, the challenges and opportunities, some of the different technologies that exist and the different aspects of them that could be helpful or harmful, to bring together advice for a particular industry, such as the creative industries. And this is something that we, as I say, have been looking at in my research. I've been working with Joe and some other colleagues as well to start thinking about how we might address such challenges. So a project we're working on at the moment is actually following up from this summit to say, okay, could we develop a tool to help bring some of this knowledge out to these kinds of businesses and organizations? So we brought together some of the different areas of concern, the things that people might be concerned about, and how they might use AI in a way that is responsible. Thinking about what are the impacts that it might have on societal structures. Is it going to affect policy? Is it going to be affecting the actual shape of organizations? Do we need to think about technical concerns such as security, authenticity? How do we put our trust in AI? Wider questions about the value of creativity. If we're going to be using AI to produce creative outputs, does that mean we are going to be having questions around what it means to be creative and the value of some of these outputs that are created by a human in conjunction with a piece of technology, or even by the technology without that human oversight? What does that mean for how we value these outputs? What questions are there around ownership and copyright? These are all some of the challenges that we need to be thinking about in a world that has these technologies in it. And these are some of the things that we want to start exploring as a group. So in this particular example of the project, we are developing a tool to help give some of this knowledge and information to businesses and organizations who might be taking that first step. We have a system where people can explore information, ask questions, get an evaluation of their own knowledge, and get some of that information, like, what is generative AI? What is it particularly used for? And where might it be challenging? Giving people information about concerns around AI, things like the sustainability aspects that I was just talking about bias, about what it means for worker rights and systems of organization. So these are the kinds of approaches that you might take to answering that question of how do you bring AI out into the world for people in a way that is helping people and improving productivity, but not having all these other side effects. So that's an example of the kind of questions we might be addressing, the kind of challenges. But there's also wider research that we are doing around AI across the faculty, which we'll be bringing in. We'll be having people, for example, from history, perhaps talking about how historically people have imagined and thought about artificial intelligence and ways of creating intelligence and thinking that are outside of humans. We'll be thinking again about how AI can be used for creative practice. This is some work that my colleague Joseph Lindley has been doing, actually developing a system that allows people to interact visually and in an embodied way with AI. So we have, this is what's called shadow play. It was presented at a festival recently, or several festivals. So people can move in front of these screens, and in real time, the image generation systems create a moving, fluid interpretation of what movements the people are making. And the person who is leading it, you can see just at the bottom corner here, this kind of dashboard, which allows the person supporting this to overlay different things of themes. Will it be interpreting people as animals or as cities or as water? So bringing that creative aspect in conjunction with the people and their movement, the AI and the person giving that input. So really interesting work that explores all these different aspects of how AI can be used creatively. I also wanted to mention here how we can think about how AI might be impacting on different sectors of society, different challenges. This is an example of a project that I was involved in with some colleagues from different departments. And actually, one of these people is Ben Dalton, who is leading one of the other global leadership programs, which is on global health humanities. So this was a project thinking about the implications for health, global health, and how people interact with health systems and what these might look like in future. So we used a methodology called design fiction, which is about thinking about a potential future situation, not necessarily trying to predict the future, but saying, what if the future was like this? And creating objects that come from that potential future. So in this case, we actually created a hospital waiting room. What might it look like? And we created an immersive experience for people to actually explore this. So we had, for example, a check-in desk that used AI to lead people through a set of questions to find out information for them, to provide them a personalized experience of this check-in process. And that was to help explore how people felt about this. Were people happy with this system? Did they feel it was giving them a good experience, an unbiased experience? Did they feel secure in the way that their data was being used in this system and who it might be going to, who had access to the health information that might be being explored by these systems? So all of this allowed people to say, well, what is a good future of a hospital waiting room, of a healthcare service that is inclusive, that thinks about things like different genders, different ethnicities and races? How are they going to be impacted differently by putting such systems in place? And that's the kind of questions that we're going to be exploring together. So going back to the course itself, it's very important to follow on from that by mentioning that a lot of the way that you will experience this MA will be in conjunction with people studying on the 4 global leadership master's courses, and a lot of the modules will be actually shared together. So we will have a shared module on global leadership. There will be 2 applied learning studios where you'll be actually working on real world problems and challenges, but again, working in a group with people from the other courses, people looking at sustainability, people looking at global affairs or global health humanities. And there'll also be a key central module, which I'll talk about in a moment, around navigating AI, society, and global challenges. So this is the real area where we get to explore some of the questions I've been talking about. And then, of course, you also get a chance to do your own project, which can take many different forms. So I've mentioned the interdisciplinarity. And this applies not only to the modules which are shared, but also to this central Navigating AI, Society and Global Challenges module, which, as I say, will have input from across the faculty in different areas of humanities, arts and social science. I said we'd talk about histories of AI. We'd also talk about presents and futures, maybe talking about how these things are structured and imagined in a theoretical sense. But also there's going to be practical hands-on experimentation, actually getting a chance to use some of these tools, learn about them through using them and understand what's out there. We won't be actually teaching you specifics of individual tools that are there at the moment because they change very quickly. We're going to be teaching more about how to understand how these systems work in the world and how to be able to interrogate them. And overall, we will be taking this critical approach to thinking about the major societal implications, the global challenges. So these topics I've been mentioning, such as equality and ethics, labor, education, the creative arts, how all of these things are being impacted by AI. And then the studios will move on to this collaborative and creative problem solving that I mentioned, working in groups, working together, and bringing new perspectives in on technology, society, and economy for challenges that do touch on all these different areas. So you'll be given briefs which are broad, but also allow you to take a specific angle. How will AI actually affect how we solve challenges such as improving a city and making it better for its inhabitants on any of these different angles? And what do we mean by better in this instance? I've mentioned a few times that we have these other programs that connect up and work in tandem with the AI MA. So these are Global Medical and Health Humanities, Global Affairs and Sustainability and Global Environmental Futures. So I think we have Derek with us, who's going to talk a little bit about how some of these connect up in the case of the Global Affairs MA.
Thanks very much, Naomi. My name's Derek Hurd. I'm a senior lecturer in Chinese studies, and I've been involved in developing the MA Global Affairs and working very closely with Naomi and other colleagues on this set of global leadership MAs. So the MA Global Affairs looks at the geopolitics of today. It looks at the histories of geopolitics as well as the futures. And from many different perspectives, we cover big topics. Some of them have already been mentioned earlier in Naomi's talk, such as climate, sustainability, health, pandemics. We look at global governance. We, of course, also cover things like migration and AI. And today, I'm going to talk a little bit about how AI intersects with the kinds of topics and challenges that we'll be exploring on the MA Global Affairs. And of course, the MA Global Affairs has its own Navigating Global Affairs module, just as the AI MA has its own navigating module that Naomi's just described. And then students from the different master's degrees all come together in the other modules, such as the studio modules. And in these studio modules in particular, as Naomi has been outlining, there's an opportunity to look at real life scenarios and apply the kind of knowledge that you've been developing in the navigating modules to a brief. And here I've got an example of a brief, hypothetical situation, but which could easily take shape in reality or have some sort of shape like this. It's 2028. You work as a policy officer for the Office of the UN Secretary General, and there has been a massive AI-directed cyber attack. And as a result of that cyber attack, all UN work systems have been taken down. The UN websites are frozen, and it's paralysis really at the UN. Nobody knows who has made this cyber attack possible. Nobody knows who's carried it out. It's possibly a state-backed operation, but we're not sure. And there are different actors who may or may not have been involved. Earlier, before the actual cyber attack, a couple of weeks before, the UN has been involved in condemning some of the announcements coming out of the US. And a couple of weeks before that, in this hypothetical situation, the UN tribunal has also handed down a ruling that's not favorable to China. And before that, an anonymous hacker group had pioneered the world's first AI-directed cyber attack against the World Bank. So there are certain, excuse me, organizations, countries that are possibly, excuse me, the perpetrators of this attack, but nobody is sure. Your job is to draft a public statement for the UN Secretary General at this crucial time for the UN. Can I have the next slide, please, Naomi? Thanks. So as the person who needs to draft the public statement, you're going to need to consider multidisciplinary approaches. How are you going to address the implications of this cyber attack that involves AI? Well, clearly, you're going to need to think about the different responses that are needed across all UN programs, because the UN, as we know, is involved in lots of different kinds of activities around the world, ranging from environmental to social, public health, humanitarian, and AI programs themselves, cyber programs themselves. All of these have been paralyzed. You need to think about how you're going to address these different challenges. People working in these programs will be unable to get information. They'll be unable to carry out the activities. They'll be unable to distribute goods. The whole system will be in great difficulties. It's your job to address these issues in a statement that helps to reassure people that you're working on getting the system back together again. At the same time, you will have big power politics in play, with different fingers being pointed from different countries at other countries, and navigating the tensions and the diplomatic issues there are going to be something that need to be carefully thought out before you issue your statement. The actual technology that's been used in this cyber attack, the AI dimension of it, raises all sorts of questions about the use of AI by states or by non-state actors. Again, that's a very challenging communication issue for you. And you're working in an environment where, as we all know, misinformation and deliberate disinformation is very much spread throughout the communication ecosystem. Your statement needs to take on these issues and try to debunk some of the misinformation and disinformation, and even anticipate some of the disinformation that might be about to be spread. Amid all of this, you're dealing with different societies that have different perspectives, different governmental positions and standpoints, working in different languages and different cultural contexts, and that cross-cultural aspect needs to be taken account of too. And next slide, please, Naomi. Thinking about the implications of this AI-directed cyber attack and the opportunities that it brings to implement some collaborative leadership going forward could also be intimated in your statement, and is certainly something that you would want to recommend to the UN Secretary General. So in what way can information on the impact of the attack be analyzed and lessons learned and communicated across UN agencies? How can the UN and its partners and allies in future work to raise awareness about the dangers of unregulated AI? technology-wise, is there an opportunity here for global cooperation to work together to try to minimize the opportunities for non-state AI-directed cyber capabilities? How do you get governments around the world on board to help rein in some of these nefarious actors? The geopolitics of it all has to also consider smaller nations. And we know that smaller nations, when they group together, have a very powerful voice. So in what way can the UN Secretary General utilize this kind of power of the voice of smaller nations building relationships? Global governance, is there an opportunity here to think about the way in which states are using cyber capabilities? Clearly, we need to have some globally respected regulations and guidelines and practices that help states and organizations to know what they can and cannot do, or what they should and should not do in terms of use of AI. We don't want AI systems to be in control of whether nuclear weapons are launched. We don't want AI systems not to have human oversight in many instances. We need to think through the new regulatory regimes in which we can help limit AI, but also empower AI in the ways in which it can help human societies and the planet as a whole. In all of this, related to the point I made in the previous slide, there's multilingual elements. There are negotiations to be had about the kind of terminology we're using to describe this new AI world that we're in, and the cultural diplomacy involved in developing narratives to bring different audiences on board requires a lot of finesse and nuance. And next slide, please, Naomi. There are Lancaster researchers working on related issues. We've got Professor Joe Burton working on cybersecurity, as well as Dr. Simona Sori, and they have edited a book that you can see there, Emerging Technologies in International Security. Professor Robert Geyer works on complexity theory. Professor Charlotte Baker works with the UN very directly on issues, not necessarily directly on AI, but has a lot of experience working, getting through UN resolutions. So we bring together a lot of multidisciplinary expertise that's related to geopolitics and AI issues here at Lancaster. And I think it's the next slide now. So Naomi, shall I hand back to you to finish off?
Yep. So the course pages have a lot of information. Some of the things we've already covered, but also go into more details on some of the modules, some of the kind of things that they will cover, as well as things like the application requirements and all the kind of logistical details. But if you do want to find out more, we will be doing more webinars on other areas of the Global Leadership Programme, but also we're always happy to answer any questions, have a chat. So do get in touch with us. There's the email address that you can use here, which will be directed to each of the appropriate program leads, or if you want to have a chat about the program as a whole. So do get in touch if you would like more information. Do visit the website. And thank you very much. Are there any questions from anyone in the room